Hello to those who are tuning in live and those watching the replay. Welcome to Lunchtime Topics, the Creative Coast bi-monthly program where we feature a business expert who shares their wisdom with Savannah's startup and innovative community. Before we get started and introduce today's guest, I want to encourage you to check out our website, www.thecreativecoast.org, and to follow us on our social media channels. Our handle is @CreativeCoast, and you can find us on all platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and also on LinkedIn and YouTube, of course. This actually is going to be posted to YouTube. Today's guest is a favorite of mine, Megan Kransler, who is the founder and owner and brand designer at Olive Ridley Studios, which is a creative agency based here in Savannah, Georgia. Megan specializes in visual branding, and she creates tangible designs to transform brands into experiences. And this can take the form of identity design, print design, and experiential design. And she's worked with local brands. You're going to know these if you're in the Savannah area: Auspicious Baking Company, Lightfoot Company, and Two Tides Brewing Company. So those are some of my favorites too in Savannah, some of my favorite places. Today, Megan is going to speak with us about what a brand experience actually is and why it matters for companies. So welcome, Megan. Thank you for being here today. We're glad to have you on.
Thanks. I am glad to be here.
So tell us more about your background.
Yeah, so I am a SCAD grad, Savannah College of Art and Design, for anyone not familiar. I got my BFA in graphic design, and I've been practicing design professionally for 12 years. I actually started at a local sign shop based in Richmond Hill, where I learned how to design, print, and install vehicle wraps and signage. And it used to be called environmental graphics. Now it's called experiential graphics. But what that means is basically branded spaces. So, it's floor graphics, wall graphics, storefront graphics, that sort of thing. And from there, I worked as an in-house designer for a couple of larger corporations that had national and international presence, which were really great experiences. In 2019, I actually was honored with a judges award by the Florida Print Awards for a lookbook that I designed. And earlier this year, I had the privilege of being one of 30 designers who participated in the experiential design program at the International Sign Association Expo. And I started Olive Ridley Studios in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic.
Nice. One of those pandemic businesses.
Yes.
Okay, so for the purpose of today's discussion, I think a lot of times when we hear the word brand, there's just this general idea of what comes to mind. Oftentimes there's, like, you think of like the logo and the color, or in the past, before I knew what a brand experience was, can think of like, oh, that's the logo and the colors, and that's a brand, maybe their slogan. So can you tell us, for the purpose of today's lunchtime topic, what is a brand experience?
Yeah, and actually, going off of what you said, I'm actually going to back up a little bit and talk about what a brand is first. Okay. So I found that is actually commonly misconstrued. A lot of people don't actually have a clear idea of what a brand is. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably heard me say this before, but it's important to clarify that your logo is not your brand. A lot of people kind of mix that up. Your logo is actually part of your brand identity. And your brand identity is all the visual characteristics that help people recognize your brand. So like all those things that you mentioned, like colors and fonts. Your brand is actually the emotional connection that people associate with your business. And so because of that, your customers and the people who are interacting with your brand get to decide for themselves what your brand is and what it means to them. And so as the business, it's your job to influence their perception. And that's where brand experience comes in, right? So brand experience is kind of how you curate people's perception of your brand. It's the sum of every interaction that somebody has with your brand and the impression that they're left with. So if you've ever heard the expression, people don't remember you for what you said, but rather for how you made them feel. That's really kind of the goal of creating an authentic brand experience, is to be remembered for how people experience your brand. In other words, how you made them feel. And every customer facing part of your business is contributing to your brand experience, whether you're thinking about it or not. And a lot of it is kind of subconscious. Like, we are, as the consumer, we're subconsciously taking all this information in and making decisions about it. And so some of the things that contribute to your brand experience are your brand colors and fonts. Those do come into play. Your brand voice, packaging, if you sell products. If you have a physical location, both the outside and the inside of your space attribute to your brand experience. What your employees wear, their attire, or if you have uniforms, that actually is part of your brand experience as well. And then, of course, your website and your social media presence, and even your customer service all play into your brand experience.
Okay. Yeah. And I went to the World of Coke for the first time this summer, which is shocking because we're only like 4 hours away in Atlanta. I'd never been. But one of the first things, if you've ever been, and maybe this was just when I went, I don't know, but they sit you down in this theater and they play this video of people enjoying Coke. And it includes a lot of the elements, it's all about the experience when you're at World of Coke. And that kind of hit home for me. Like, I almost cried during watching this Coca-Cola video. They made it emotional. They like really pulled on your heartstrings. And I was like, why am I getting emotional about this? Why am I feeling things? So, so that was obviously a big corporation. And so there's probably a lot of small businesses in here. What's the biggest advantage of developing a brand experience? Why do small businesses need this?
Yeah, so there are actually a lot of benefits, some that you may not even think of. And like I mentioned, whether it's realized or not, you're already creating a brand experience. So being intentional about it and making it memorable is really going to set you up for long-term growth. And some of the specific benefits are something that we all want in our business: increased sales and revenue. And that comes from greater market visibility, which is especially true for packaging. So like if your product is on a shelf with a bunch of other similar products, it's about, how do you connect with your target audience and how do you set yourself apart from all the other packages that you're competing with. Building a brand experience is also going to help you authentically connect with your target audience, which is really going to help you convert more prospects into customers, and then convert those customers into brand ambassadors. And if you're not are you familiar with brand ambassador? Yeah, I see some people shaking their heads. If you're not, a brand ambassador is just basically, it's a customer who is promoting your business on your behalf. And the easiest example is like if you sell branded merchandise, like if you sell a t-shirt with your logo on it, somebody buys that t-shirt and then wears it out in the world, they're now a brand ambassador. So they're advertising your business for you. You're not paying them to do that. Another real big benefit is focusing on intentional brand experience is going to make you look more professional. And that is going to allow you to establish credibility faster, which is especially important if you're a new business or if you're moving into a new market. The more professional you look, the faster you're going to build trust with the people that you're trying to connect with. It's also going to make it easier for you to compete with larger and more established brands. Again, kind of going back to the credibility thing, if you look like you belong with those brands, people aren't going to think twice about it. They're not going to know that you're maybe a sole proprietor competing with a Fortune 500 company. If you look the part, people are automatically going to have more trust in what you're selling. And it's also, this is one of the benefits that I love the most personally as a small business owner. It's going to increase your confidence as a business owner. I am a big believer that if you look like a pro on the outside, you're going to feel like a pro on the inside. It's kind of like buying a new outfit. You get a new outfit that fits you really well. You feel really good in it. You walk down the street with a different confidence. You're feeling yourself. You're feeling good. And building out an authentic brand experience will do the same thing for you in your business. It's going to boost your confidence, make you feel good about what you're selling. The last one, I think this one might be the most surprising to people, but brand experience can actually help you hire and retain employees who are the best fit for your business and your brand. And it's really the same, your brand experience is going to help you attract the right customers. It's also going to help you attract the right employees.
Yeah, so we had an interview with Thomas, and I'm blanking on his last name, but he's also he's a brand designer. And one of the first things he said was if you don't have your brand together, he said the same exact thing was people aren't going to have trust in you. And it really, all those things she said, I didn't even think about. It increases my own confidence, but but sitting on that a little longer, I realized whenever I'm designing something for our social media, if it doesn't feel right, I just don't really feel great about putting it out. Like I feel like, I've got to put this thing out. I want it to look professional. I want it to look great. And thinking from a customer experience, if I've ever been to a website where things just looked off, like they weren't flowing together, even maybe the user experience, like where the buttons were on the page didn't flow and wasn't easy, that really is a turnoff in business. And it's like, I don't know if I'd use them again. It seems like they're not going to do a great job for me for whatever services or products I need. So that's a great point in terms of trust. Okay, so can you talk about the physical brand experience and what are some examples and what makes the physical brand experience stand out specifically?
Yeah, so the physical brand experience is all of the customer facing parts of your business that are in the real world, right? So anything tangible, basically. It includes things like your signage, your storefront graphics, interior graphics, the environment that you're creating, packaging, tags, labels. If you're a restaurant or cafe, your menu. Again, employee attire and uniform, that's part of your physical brand experience. And even company vehicles. So if you have a delivery vehicle, that's part of your physical brand experience. And if it's not branded, you're missing out on thousands of impressions every day. That's actually a really important part. And really, so what you're aiming for with your physical brand experience are making impactful moments to make your brand more memorable. There's that old adage that you have to see something or read something 7 times before you actually commit it to memory. And part of physical brand experience is doing that. It's getting your brand in a consistent way in front of people as many times as you can so that they remember who you are and what you do. It's really about creating those moments where, like if you have a retail store, for example, as soon as your ideal customer walks in the door, you want them to be hit with that moment, like, oh my gosh, I love this place, or, oh, this place is so cool or cute or beautiful or whatever adjective you want associated with your brand. You want to give them that feeling as soon as they walk in the door. It's really all about an emotional connection. Emotion is actually the biggest factor when it comes to brand loyalty. It's the biggest driver in whether or not somebody is going to be loyal to your brand. So you really want people to feel emotionally connected to what you're doing. And I'll give you an example that'll probably help connect this a little bit. I got a pair of Moxie roller skates earlier this year. I got them because the skates were really cute, but when they came in the mail, the box was so well done, I couldn't throw it away. I had no purpose for it, but I kept it sitting around my house for months because I loved the design on the box so much that I had a really hard time putting it in the recycling bin. And that is a great example of physical brand experience working well, right? And everyone has, yes, Moxie skates are great, Ryan. Everyone has examples like that. Like if you've ever been compelled to take a photo in the restroom of a restaurant because of how they had it decorated, right? That's an example of physical brand experience doing its job. If you've ever been drawn to a business from across the street because the way that they've done the front of their store really drew you in, that's an example of physical brand experience doing its job. And like my example, if you've gotten something in the mail and the packaging just felt too nice to throw away, that's physical brand experience working the way that it should.
Okay, so there was a question that I missed in the box here. Rebecca asked, can you restate the point about missing out on impressions and what would make that possible? Thank you. I think we were talking about impressions. Is that from the physical standpoint, I guess, in terms of like having it on your vehicle?
Yeah, I was saying that specifically related to vehicle graphics. So if you have a company vehicle that you drive to work every day, or that you make deliveries in, or that you make house calls in, vehicle wraps are actually one of the most cost-effective advertisings available. It seems like a large investment when you go to get it done, but they last several years. So, you've got to remember to kind of split that cost up. But a vehicle wrap does literally get thousands of impressions every day. So if you have a company vehicle and you don't have it properly branded, you're missing out on thousands of impressions every single day when you're out driving around. And I know, at least it's true for me, I'm sure it's true for most people. When you see a wrapped vehicle, it draws your attention. Especially like if you're sitting in traffic and there's a whole line of cars, but one of them is wrapped, that's the one that you're going to look at. Yeah.
So I have a quick story about that. One was I was driving down the road on Victory Drive and I saw this van, and it was gotyourgoats.com, I think. And it was literally a goat rental business for like keeping your lawn maintained, right? Because, people will own goats so they don't have to mow their lawn. The goats take care of the grass. But I never forgot that. This was forever ago. I'm like, oh, that's actually, they just would release the goats on your lawn to take care of it. And they weren't even in Savannah. They were, I think it was like somewhere for down in Brunswick or something. I can't remember. And the other instance that I'm thinking about is only a few weeks ago, was driving down, I think it was Waters, and there was a car that had a wrap on it. The car didn't have, it was very botched. And on the back, in writing that you could barely read, the font was barely readable. It's like, we made this wrap, this car wrap. And my fiance, who doesn't do anything in design, goes, wow, wouldn't get a wrap from them. That's it's pretty bad advertising, but I had to point that out. Like, if you're going to do it, you want to do it right. You want to get the right person behind it. Like, I was thinking to myself, like, wow, I can't even read that font. Like, they don't have a design background, obviously. So,
right. Yeah. And that's a great example of physical brand experience not working well. It's just because, and that's such a good point, because, just because you do it doesn't necessarily mean that it's done well. Right. There's a certain level of effectiveness to all of these things, which obviously hiring a professional can help with that. I think we're going to get into that a little bit later, so I don't want to jump ahead.
Yeah, that's okay. The font looked like it was done in Webdings, which, if you remember, I think it was Webdings, remember? You could not read rep. That was just the fun thing we used as a kid in Microsoft Word. But anyways, I'm digressing. Okay, so we talked about the physical experience. Everybody now is focused on the digital, and now a lot of people are remote. So can we talk about the virtual brand experience? It seems more important than ever right now for businesses. And can you elaborate on what an ideal virtual brand experience looks like?
Yes. So your virtual experience is mainly going to be your website and your social media presence. If you run digital ads, then that is also part of your virtual experience. Depending on the business, there may be other aspects, but those are really the two main things, is your website and your social media presence. And it's really important to maintain consistency across environments, not only across different digital environments, but across the virtual and the physical, right? So you want everything associated with your brand to look, sound, and feel like your brand. That's really the only way you're going to gain brand recognition. Going back to that whole, you need to see or read something 7 times before you remember it. You want to make sure that all of these touch points are consistent so that people start to recognize your brand. And one really big aspect, so if you're both an online and an in-person business, if somebody finds you online, it should be really easy for them to find you in person. Right. So if they go and look at your website and then they're like, oh, okay, I'm going to go check out this store in person while I'm downtown or whatever, they should immediately be able to recognize your business in person based on what they saw on your website. So that means, using the same logos, fonts, and colors on your website as your physical experience. So your signage, your storefront, all of that stuff. So I'm going to say this, you need a website. I know that it seems like you shouldn't have to say that in 2022, but I still see a lot of businesses that only have a Facebook page and that they pretend that that's their website, right? There's a risk involved with that because you don't own the content that's on Facebook or Instagram. Mm. So if those platforms go away tomorrow, all of a sudden you don't have a web presence anymore. So it's important to have a website, and it's important that you own your website. And it needs to be mobile friendly, right? That should be kind of obvious now, but again, I'm constantly surprised at websites that, like, I'll go to look into a business and they clearly haven't updated their website since like 2005, and it's not mobile friendly, it's not responsive. And I don't want to get too much into that discussion because I'm not a UX designer. But that can really make or break your business in today's society. Just like you were saying earlier, Kate, if you go to a website and it's hard to navigate, or, like you can't find the information that you're looking for, you're probably just going to move on and go to some other business, whose website is easier to use and that has the information that you're looking for. So you want to make sure that you include, that you answer as many questions as you can on your website. So, if it's what you offer, who you are, how to get in contact with you, what your hours are, where you're located, all that stuff, you want to make sure that it's easy to find on your website. And for social media, you really want to make sure that your brand's personality is showing through on your social media as well. I know I'm going to sound like a broken record, but use your brand's color palette and your fonts and don't deviate from that. It can be really easy to get sucked into, I like to call it the trend trap, especially when you're using a program like Canva and there are just like thousands of templates for you to choose from. You can be like, oh, wow, I really like this one and I'm going to use it. I would just caution you to stop and think whether or not it's actually appropriate for your brand before you use it, because it may not be. And, the reason for that is when you're consistent for long enough, your followers will actually start to recognize your content without even seeing your logo or your username. And that just goes back to brand recognition, right? That's really kind of what you're aiming for, is making that connection and getting people to recognize your brand.
Okay, so this one's for entrepreneurs listening who are still in the concept phase of their business. At what stage in their business should they develop the brand experience? Yeah, me too. I got to get some water here.
Yes. That's a good question. And so obviously, ideally, in a perfect world, you want your brand experience to be top of mind from the get-go. But it's never too late to start focusing on it. So I am a big advocate of always be improving, right? That's kind of my mentality. Your brand isn't a static thing. It's really kind of a living and breathing thing. So start with what you can and just keep going from there. And if you work with a professional to develop your brand identity, there should be some brand strategy involved with that process. And you can use that to help you make informed decisions going forward. So you hire a professional to help you with your brand identity. That gives you a really good starting place. And it gives you the tools and information that you need to continue building your brand experience from there. I know as well as anyone that budget can sometimes be a hindrance, especially for small businesses. I think it's important to keep in mind that you don't have to do everything all at once. You can do things in pieces. And I think Auspicious is a really good example of that, actually. Like that when they first started, I know most of you are probably local, so you're familiar, but Auspicious Baking Company here in Savannah, when they started a few years ago, they were hand stamping their logo onto all of their boxes and bags, because that was just the most cost-effective way for them to do it. And that was great when they started. Now they've grown. They're going through so many boxes and bags every week between the retail and wholesale part of their business that it didn't make sense for them to be hand stamping all their boxes and bags anymore. So they realized it was time for them to take a step back and reevaluate what they were doing. And they actually took the leap of improving their brand experience. And now they have printed boxes and bags that they use.
I saw the wrap you did for their van too. That was lovely.
Thank you.
Yeah. But to speak a little further on that, from our standpoint at the Idea Accelerator Bootcamp, and maybe this is another question for you. So for businesses that really don't know what they're going to be yet, one of the things we encounter with a lot of companies is like, oh, I know what I'm going to do. I know what I'm going to sell. And I know it's going to be really successful. I'm going to go out and I'm going to but the first thing I need is like a logo, without testing their product first, and really making sure they have a viable product, or what part of their business is going to be the most successful. So for that, do you recommend people, they really test their idea first and know that they have something that is going to make them money before they go? And like, I've seen people pay thousands to get stuff done and they don't really know if they've got a serious business, so what is your recommendation there? I mean, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, you're right. A lot of people, they get caught up thinking that the logo is the most important thing that they need to get a business started, but, and not saying that your logo is not important. It is. It's a brand identifier. It's definitely an important part of your business and something that you want to get right. But your logo is really, like I'll use packaging design as an example. If you're bringing a product to market, your packaging design is actually way more important than your logo. Nobody's comparing the logos on the packages when you're shopping for a product in a store, right? Like you're looking for the type of product you need first, but then the one that you pick up off the shelf is generally determined on how the package is designed, and the language that they use on the packaging is not the logo. And so starting with brand strategy is actually probably a better way to go, especially for your dollar. Because the brand strategy is used to inform the decisions that a designer makes when they're designing your logo and helping you develop a color palette and picking out fonts that are appropriate for your brand. But that strategy also tells you a lot about your business, and it helps you figure out who your target market is and really kind of gets to the why of your business. That is really an important step that a lot of people skip over. And so I would always recommend starting with the strategy and even product viability before you get to the logo stage.
Got it. Okay. Okay. So how does one assess how well their brand experience is working?
Yeah. So this is not easy, right? And the only way to know how well any aspect of your brand is doing is by asking your customers. Because again, all the things that you're doing are just trying to influence their perception of your brand, but they're the ones who actually get to decide what your brand is. So the only way to know if you are influencing people in the right way is to ask them. Send out a survey to your email list or put up a poll on your social media. Find out if the words your customers are using to describe your brand are the same words that you would use to describe your brand. And if there's a disconnect there, then you know that you need to change something in your brand strategy. And I actually just, I'll do a little self plug here. I just put out a physical brand experience checklist. So if you want to do a self-assessment of your physical brand experience, I just put together a guide to help you do that. And I'll throw the link in the chat. And that's a really good first step to see if you have all the things in place that you need to start building that brand experience. But yeah, really the only way you're going to know for sure is to ask people.
Awesome. And that kind of goes back to is like, a big part of from what I do in terms of marketing and, you talked about go to market is that customer discovery, figure out, you need to really know what works for your customers, before it needs to be customer driven. And that's any business, like from the product to whatever you're selling. If you're selling something that nobody wants, then it doesn't really, you know what I mean? If you're putting stuff together that nobody really likes, like the aesthetic of it, the feel of it isn't great, then it doesn't really matter, how good of an idea you think you have. If it doesn't all work,
Yes. Well, and like on the exact opposite side of that spectrum, you could have a really great product, but if it's not packaged in a way that looks professional and polished, people aren't going to buy it.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. So as a company begins to grow in employees, and you got more hands in the pot, creating design, physical and virtual experiences, what is the best way to make sure a brand stays consistent as the company grows?
Yeah, this is really challenging. It's pretty easy to do when you have, maybe 5 employees. But as you grow, it's definitely going to get more challenging. And training is really the simple answer. If you're serious about creating an impactful brand experience, every single person who works for you should know your brand inside and out. They should know, quote, what's on brand for your business. They should know what fonts and colors are acceptable. They should know specific words or phrases that are associated with your brand. And equally as important, they should know what words and phrases not to use when interacting with customers. I think a good example of this is Moe's Southwest Grill, right? What happens as soon as you walk in the door at Moe's? Everyone who works there stops. Yes, exactly. Yeah. They all stop and they yell, "Welcome to Moe's." That's part of their physical brand experience. Well, not brand experience, not physical. I get so used to throwing that word in there that it just like comes out of my mouth now without even thinking.
Gotcha. Okay. So why hire somebody to develop your brand experience for you? Oh, hey, before we do that, I want to go back to, you were talking about, we were talking about growing and training, going back to that checklist you created. We just got through doing the soft launch of a brand, choosesalve.com. Check it out if you have a chance. But we created a guide, and we went through a checklist of things that we wanted, from web copy to their persona and all that good stuff that make the meat of a company. It was our first time doing it as a team. And I think going back to your checklist, is that something that you could use to really guide, be a reference point? Once pulling off that checklist to create a guide, basically, is that what that is?
Yeah, it's really kind of a step-by-step guide for the things that you need to have in place in order to be mindful of your physical brand experience and what you're creating. It includes all the things that I named off earlier, and kind of some best practices for all those things, including branding basics. So it goes through, your logo and color palette and font choices, and then going into the physical brand aspect, it's going to cover your storefront graphics and your packaging and all that kind of stuff. And it is a checklist, but there is criteria for each thing so that you can see if you're meeting the criteria for those different items. And if you do, great, check it off the list, move on to the next thing. And if not, then that's something where an area where you can improve on in your business.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So now going back to the question I was going to ask, why hire somebody to develop a brand experience for you?
That's such a good question. And it might surprise you to know that a lot of designers and design agencies actually outsource their branding to another designer. Like design agencies will hire another design agency to develop their brand for them, right? And the reason for that is because we're often too close to our own business to make objective decisions about what's best for our brand. You have to keep in mind that you are not necessarily your ideal customer. So, while you may really like a specific color and want to use it for your brand, do you know if that color is going to resonate with your target audience? Do you know that the font you're using is sending the right message to potential customers, right? Probably not. Designers have training in those things that it's kind of like if you decide whether or not to hire a handyman to do home repairs, or if you decide to do them yourself, there's a lot of things you can figure out to do on your own. You can go watch a tutorial on how to do it. But the quality is almost always better when you hire a professional because they're trained in how to do it. They've done it before. They have experience. And so when it comes to your branding and your brand experience, humans are incredibly visual creatures, right? We make intuitive decisions based on visual branding all day long. And if you've ever bought something just because of the packaging, you know exactly what I mean. I am one of those people for sure, partially because I'm a designer. It ruins your life. I refuse to buy anything with the font papyrus on it because I don't like that font. So, it's things like that. They can make a big difference. And so hiring a professional is really going to help you make sure that you're sending the right message to your potential customers. And the right designer is also there's going to be strategy involved with that. Whether it's an actual strategy session that you go through, or it's just what the designer does intuitively on their end, you're almost always going to get a better result from hiring a professional than by trying to figure it out yourself.
Yes, I appreciate, so I design in Canva all day long, but I am an amateur designer. And the minute I can get professional hands on something, I'm like, okay, this is great. It looks a million times better than what I can do. We're just a tiny nonprofit. So I'm like, I got to get this thing out in Canva, really fast. But I've noticed a huge difference. And years ago, we had designers develop our style guide. And it's been helpful to me, going back to what you said about as the team grows, you bring in new people, to have that as a guiding star in terms of our website and the language we want to use and all of that good stuff. But I don't think it could have been, like, I definitely feel too close to it sometimes. Like, I have my own emotions that go into my brand, and having somebody else who's got the knowledge and know how to, and ability to talk to our audience in a way that actually addresses our audience is so important. Or not talk to, I guess, relate to our audience is the best way.
Yeah, for sure. And it also, like, I know from experience, when you're working with the same brand all day, every day, it can get kind of old, and it's going to make you tempted to branch out and do things that are not in line with your brand. Because, you're like, oh, I'm sick of using this font, or I'm sick of using this color. But if you're doing your own branding, like, when you're designing things in Canva and you're like, oh man, I'm so sick of using this same color combo and the same font combo, you have to keep in mind that the people you are putting content out to, they don't see every single piece of content that you put out. Really, like, you're the only one who sees everything that you do. So it's not old to them. And for them, it helps them recognize that it's coming from you. I know that's a little bit of a tangent, but it's very relatable. So I used to work as an in-house designer, and I was the same way. I was like, oh, I'm so sick of using red, or, oh, I'm so sick of using gray. But it's important to keep in mind that, again, you are not your audience. So even if you're sick of it, your audience is probably not.
So I'm guilty of this. I have to admit, for lunchtime topics specifically, and maybe this is an offline discussion, but I've changed the colors on lunchtime topics. So all of our programs typically have a different shade with our logo on it. But the lunchtime topics ones, I just despised what I originally created and changed the logo, the colors on it so many times, because I got tired of doing the same thing over and over. Like, we used to have a lunchtime topic logo that people could identify with, and I was like, I hate this logo. I don't want to use it anymore. It's probably bad. That's bad. But I could definitely speak to that. And having an outside person, you need those professional eyes and that professional know-how. So speaking of that, where can people go to connect with you online?
So I am, my website is oliveridleystudios.com. Actually,
I was going to try to put it in the chat here, but
I've got links here. I will put them in the chat. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn as Olive Ridley Studios. Instagram is really my best content. I'm not going to lie. If you want to see me doing silly stuff in reels, follow me on Instagram.
I can attest to that. You've got some great videos, great reels.
Thank you. So yeah, that is where you can find me.
Awesome. Okay, so this wraps our questions. If you came in late and you want to catch the first part of the interview, we're going to post this to our website probably within the next week. It'll probably be up by next Monday and in our Monday newsletter. And you can find that all at thecreativecoast.org. And we'll make sure to post these links there, Megan, so people can tap into you and your physical brand experience checklist as well. But does anybody have, before we go, we're not at the hour mark yet, does anybody have any questions for Megan based on what we've talked about today? Feel free to pop it in the chat or come off mute now that we're done with the interview.
You did a really good job asking a lot of questions, Kate, and you answered them really well. So this was really great. Thank you, both of you.
Oh, thanks, Joanne.
Thanks. I'm just looking to see if anybody else is coming off mute.
Yeah, I'm just so Megan, I've seen you many times at She Hustles, and we've more or less have said, hey, but I've never really had an in-depth conversation with you. So this was so great to get to know who you are. So I look forward to getting to know you more now that I know you more.
Yes. Yeah. I'll be the first to admit I am an introvert. So if you see me at an event, feel free to grab me and strike up a conversation. Depending on my mood, I may not be the first one to do that. So yes, always, please feel free.
I'm there too, so I gotcha. But Lauren asked a question. She said, do you have a specific project you can show that your branding work really helped a client shine?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good question, Lauren. Lauren she is also a designer, which is probably why she had such great questions. She was actually part of the experiential design group with me earlier this year. So thank you for being here, Lauren. I think the best example is probably the indoor golf lounge that I helped design. It's a little location in Iowa. So not anything local, but there are pictures of it on my website. They put a little indoor golf place on their property, and they built it out. And when you build out a space, you just get white walls put up everywhere, and they really wanted to make it a space that would be memorable and that people would want to come back to. And so I helped them develop their identity, and with that we did a brand pattern, and I used the brand pattern to create a huge focal wall in their space. And then we also used it to cover all the tabletops in their space in a different colorway. So like everything is coordinating. It's super fun and bright in there because of it. And it makes a great like photo backdrop for when people are going in groups to do this golf thing. They can take a picture in front of it. I think it definitely made a big impact on their business.
Lovely. One of my favorite things you've done is with Lightfoot Company. You did a lot of work with her, didn't you? In terms of her truck, right? I guess, is it a truck?
The sexy Hillary.
The sexy Hillary. Hillary the Refillery. That's it. Okay.
Yes.
Hillary the Refillery. Yeah. That always stands out to me, the work you did with the local company Lightfoot. And I've seen your auspicious work too. So in Two Tides, I guess, because I pass it all the time. Lauren said, do you have a favorite project and why, and favorite type of project?
Oh, good question. Coming in hot with the good questions, Lauren. So honestly, brand patterns are probably my favorite thing to design. Both because they're fun for me to make, but also because like their applications are just limitless. So if you have a brand pattern in place, like for example, the pattern that is my background right now, that's Olive Ridley's brand pattern. So they come in all sorts of different varieties. The one that I designed for Two Tides is for their new burger place that they're opening up, Crispy. And theirs was an icon-based pattern. So not only do they have a pattern, but now they also have all these little individual icons that they can use for like their story highlights on Instagram or, however else they wanted to use them. But once you have a pattern, it's just another identifying piece of your brand that you can put everywhere. You can use it on a focal wall in your space. You can use it on your business cards. You can use it on your website. You can use it for your Zoom background. You can have apparel made out of it. So they're really my favorite thing, both to design and both because they have so many practical purposes. And I think honestly, the brand pattern that I designed for Crispy is probably one of my favorite projects to date. It was just really fun. It's super bright and colorful. When I was talking to Liz at Two Tides about the design, she used the phrase, I want it to be Miami Vice meets retro food truck. And like that just instantly clicked with me. I was like, yes, okay, I've got you. I know exactly what you want. And it really it created this really fun and bright pattern. It was a lot of fun to make.
Whoops. Sorry. Muted myself again. One more question. Is there anything you are trying to do more of? This is also from Lauren.
Oh, great question. Yes, thank you. So I think physical spaces are something that I really want to do more of. Like what I was able to do with the indoor golf lounge, I would really like to do more projects like that, helping businesses build out their interior space. For me, it's kind of where branding meets interior design, right? So there's a lot of possibilities and fun that can be had when you're thinking about your interior space, and a lot of ways to customize it specifically to your brand.
Awesome. Any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and wrap up here. Doesn't look like it. Megan, thanks so much for coming on today. I always like talking with you. If you're in Savannah, C-Spot's next week,
yes,
right? On the 18th, right, at Moon River Brewing?
The Wednesday and the 19th, 1 week from today. I should have, thank you. I should have mentioned that in my little background thing. So I organize C-Spot, which is a creative networking group here in Savannah. We meet once a month. And so, yes, next Wednesday from 5:30 to 7:30, we will be hanging out in the beer garden at Moon River. You don't need to be a creative to come. Anyone's welcome. But it is specifically kind of a space where creatives can get together, and we kind of talk about challenges that we're facing in our businesses and all sorts of stuff, really. It is a networking group, but it's really kind of more of a, I don't know, I think of it more of a social hour than anything else, honestly. It's just a nice way to talk to other creatives in the area, especially talking to creatives who are in different fields from you. It's always interesting to get perspectives from people who are doing something that's creative, but in a different part of the creative spectrum. So
it's a good way to get leads too, right? Like if you're talking to a photographer and they've met someone who's looking for a graphic designer or something, that's an awesome way to get connected if you're, if you're freelancing, right? Or I'm just guessing.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And like for me, I don't offer web design services, but and I don't offer photography, right? But those kind of people come to C-Spot, so I can meet people who I can partner with on projects to help my clients too. So yeah, it's a really good way to connect with other creatives in the area. And if you are in need of creative services, it's a great place to meet people and, see if you are going to get along with them before hiring them. Creative projects are always a bit of a collaboration, so it's important that you're going to work well together.